He's asleep, in my arms. That whisper wasn't meant for her. But Saraya stood frozen, her phone pressed to her ear, her other hand gripping the steering wheel of a parked car on a rain-slicked road. Her daughter stirred softly in the back seat, curled under a pink blanket. The hum of the storm outside couldn't drown the sting of that voice. She didn't need to ask who it was. She didn't need to ask where he was. 6 years had passed since she last saw Kaylin Ward. 6 years of silence. 6 years of raising their daughter alone. And yet, here he was, still living like she never existed. The secretary's voice had sounded smug, intimate, lazy, like she had answered a call meant for her husband while resting on his chest. But Kaylin had never been her husband, only her mistake, and her greatest gift. Saraya slowly ended the call and stared ahead, the headlights reflecting off falling rain like trembling tears. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where every tale reminds you of love's unexpected turns and the strength it takes to walk alone until someone truly sees you. Have you ever had a night you couldn't forget, but they did? Have you ever raised something beautiful from someone who disappeared without warning? Tonight's story will pull you through regret, silence, second chances, and quiet redemption. So, if you've ever believed that real love might take time to return, stay with us. 6 years earlier, the rooftop glittered beneath strings of golden lights. Waiters in black suits moved like shadows across the crowd, serving champagne and slow smiles. Music drifted through the sky like a secret nobody wanted to admit they'd heard. Saraya was behind the bar, not in a gown, not in heels. Just a neat blouse and a name tag that wasn't hers. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her friend had called her last minute. "I'm sick. If I don't show, they'll dock my hours. Please, Riri, I need this." Saraya was working 2 jobs already, but she said yes. That's what she always did. For people, for peace, for kindness. She tied her curls back, grabbed the shaker, and stepped into a world that didn't know her. Then she saw him. Or rather, she noticed the way the room changed when he moved. Kaylin Ward. He didn't need an introduction. His name lived in headlines. Tech maverick. The billionaire with ice in his veins. Youngest CEO in the city's history. All teeth and timing. Cold eyes. Measured smiles. He stood with board members, but his attention was elsewhere. Watching. Quiet. Watching her. Saraya felt it. The weight of it. But she kept working. Unbothered. Detached. She poured drinks without looking up, handed cocktails with quiet efficiency. Maybe that's why he walked over. He didn't start with charm or a compliment. He simply said, "No one here looks like they're enjoying this." She blinked at him. Then, maybe they shouldn't have come. His mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something smaller. He didn't leave after that. Kaylin didn't speak like a billionaire. Not to her. He asked about the weather, her music taste, why she tied her hair up like she was always ready to run. She asked him nothing. Not about money, not about the company, not even his name. He noticed that. "You're the only person here who doesn't care who I am," he said, sipping something amber and expensive. "Should I?" she asked. His eyes softened. "No. That's why I'm still standing here." They talked about nothing, about everything. It wasn't fireworks, it was quiet fire. She told him she once wanted to be a writer. He asked why she didn't. She didn't answer. They moved to the far end of the rooftop, where the crowd thinned, where silence could live without apology. And when he touched her arm, it wasn't bold. It was gentle, like he was asking for permission he didn't expect to be given. She let him. They didn't go far. A guest suite down the hall. Locked door. No expectations. He kissed her like he didn't know how long he had. She kissed him like she didn't care where it ended. The city blinked beneath them. It was slow, raw, unrushed. He held her after. No promises, just breath. She remembered the quiet of his chest, the way he didn't sleep, only stared at the ceiling as if afraid of what dreams might say. She wanted to ask what he was running from, but she didn't. He didn't offer anything. So she gave nothing. By dawn, he was gone. Only the sheets and the imprint of his weight beside her remained. On the nightstand, one single card. "Thank you. Don't reach out." KW, she didn't cry. She made the bed. Got dressed. Told the front desk she was heading home, and she did. And that was the end of it. Until 2 months later, Soraya stood in the bathroom, staring at the test stick. 2 lines. She sat on the edge of the tub, her heart pounding slow and heavy. She didn't think of the gala, not at first, but then her memory worked backwards. That night, that look, that name on the card. Kalen Ward. She could have searched him, could have called that number, but she didn't. He left her before sunrise. She'd never chase a man who ran first. She started saving, moved out of the city, found work as a part-time school assistant in a small town, picked up evening shifts at a diner. When her belly grew, so did her resolve. She named the baby girl Liana, not because it meant anything fancy, but because it sounded gentle. The first time Liana opened her eyes, Soraya paused. She saw something familiar, cold blue eyes that didn't belong to her. They belonged to a man who wouldn't know the sound of his daughter's laugh. And Soraya decided then she wouldn't beg him to learn. Rain slid down the windshield as Soraya drove through the quiet night. She kept her hands steady on the wheel, eyes forward. Her daughter, Liana, was still asleep in the back seat, her small frame bundled beneath the same pink blanket from earlier. But something had shifted. Not outside, inside her. The words still echoed like a cruel joke. "He's asleep. In my arms." That wasn't meant for her ears. It wasn't her place anymore. Maybe it never was. She hadn't thought about Kalen in months. Not really. Not past the usual, what if he knew? Would he care? Would he try? But tonight, she got her answer. He didn't just forget her. He replaced her. And the truth was, she didn't expect anything else. Still, hearing it out loud broke something she thought had long healed. She pulled into the driveway of their small townhouse. The porch light flickered, just like it had last week, and she reminded herself to call maintenance again. She carried Liana inside gently, careful not to wake her. Her little girl's hand curled tighter around the stuffed bunny tucked beneath her chin. Once she was in bed, Soraya sat by the kitchen table in the dark. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't eat. She didn't cry. She just sat there, listening to the storm pass. 6 years ago, she made a decision. Not just to keep her child, but to keep her dignity. She'd never chase someone who left before morning. She'd never ask a man to love what he didn't want to know. But tonight, hearing another woman answer his phone, confirmed that he never once looked back. And that hurt more than she'd prepared for. She remembered the morning she found out she was pregnant. She hadn't panicked. She hadn't screamed. She'd stared at the stick like it was someone else's test. And then she did what she always did, pulled herself together and worked. 9 months later, Liana arrived during a quiet afternoon in the middle of September. There were no flowers, no hospital visitors, no name suggestions from anyone else. Just her and her daughter, and the soft, instinctive knowledge that she'd never be alone again. People asked sometimes, "Where's the dad?" She smiled. "It's just me." They offered sympathy, advice, assumptions. She turned them away with kindness. Always kindness. Some told her to track him down, said Liana deserved more. But Soraya didn't believe in forcing doors that closed themselves. And deep down, she never wanted her daughter to be seen as someone's obligation. She deserved love that stayed, not guilt that showed up late. That night at the charity gala had felt surreal. Not because he was rich, not because he was famous, because, for a few hours, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like the tired waitress who forgot her dreams. She felt seen, listened to, wanted. And even if it ended before morning, that feeling mattered. What she didn't expect, what she couldn't prepare for, was how permanent that night would become, not in memory, but in the form of a small girl with soft curls and eyes that mirrored a man who didn't even know she breathed. As Liana grew, Soraya saw pieces of him. Not the wealth, not the power, the quiet intensity, the way she observed a room before speaking, the way her smile came slow but full, and sometimes, when she was alone, Saraya wondered if he had known. Would he have cared? She didn't want to admit she still asked herself that, but she did. Until tonight, now she knew. He hadn't searched, hadn't tried. He was with someone else, comfortable, asleep, unbothered. And Saraya was done asking. She would never be that girl who clung to what if. She had something real, Liana. That was all the love she needed. The next morning, life moved forward as it always did. Toast, lunchboxes, hair ties, school uniforms. "Mommy," Liana said between bites of cereal, "my class is going to visit a big building downtown next week." Saraya paused. "What building?" "I think it's a company, a big one. The principal said it's a tech place with a cool view." Liana fished a paper from her backpack and handed it over. Saraya unfolded it and read the letter. A field trip. Greystone Elementary's top-performing class had been invited to tour one of the city's leading tech firms. At the bottom, in bold letters, Ward Technologies Headquarters, CEO Kaylin Ward. Her fingers tightened around the paper. Liana sipped her juice, oblivious. "Are you coming with us, Mummy? They said they need chaperones." Saraya blinked. "Yes," she said softly. "I'll be there." She didn't sleep much the night before the trip. She kept telling herself he wouldn't remember. He met hundreds of people a month. She was one night in a lifetime of flashing lights and fast exits. But part of her knew. He would know. You don't forget the woman who gave you a daughter, even if you never realized it. The day arrived with cloudless skies and 30 excited second graders. Saraya wore a soft cream blouse, her hair pulled into a low bun. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. She wasn't there to be seen. She was there for her daughter. Liana bounced along the sidewalk, hand in her mother's, wide eyes taking in the towering glass building ahead. "It's so big," she whispered. "It is," Saraya replied. They entered the lobby, met by a cheerful PR rep who greeted the teachers and gathered the children. Everything was smooth, professional, until the elevator doors opened on the top floor and he stepped out. Kaylin Ward, dark suit, no tie, clean-shaven, still unreadable. His assistant was talking beside him, flipping through a tablet. He nodded once, then glanced toward the group and froze. His eyes landed on Liana first, then drifted up to Saraya. It was instant. Recognition, shock, then silence. The assistant kept talking, unaware. Kaylin didn't move. Saraya felt the ground tilt beneath her, but stood still. "Mr. Ward," the PR rep said brightly. "This is Greystone Elementary's accelerated class. We're thrilled to be here." Kaylin didn't respond. He was still staring. Saraya gave him a polite nod. "Mr. Ward," she said evenly, "we appreciate your time." He blinked. His jaw moved slightly. Then, finally, he found his voice. "You." His assistant looked confused. Liana stepped closer to her mother. Saraya held her hand gently. "This is Liana," she said quietly. Kaylin's eyes dropped to the child again. Same eyes, same small frown. He didn't ask anything else. He dismissed his assistant with a wave and turned back toward his office. "Cancel my meetings," he said. The assistant opened her mouth to protest, but something in his tone silenced her. "Yes, sir." Kaylin walked away, but not before glancing back once more. Right at Liana, right at the proof of everything he never knew. And Saraya knew without him saying a word. He hadn't just remembered her. He'd seen himself in a 6-year-old girl who had no idea who he was. Kaylin stood alone in his office, the skyline behind him. The door had been closed for 20 minutes, yet he hadn't moved. His hands gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles pale against the dark wood. Liana. He hadn't heard the name before, not in articles, not in conversations, not even in rumors, but he had seen those eyes. Once, in a mirror, every day of his life, and now, on a child, his child. He didn't need a DNA test. He didn't need time to process. He already knew, and he hated himself for not knowing sooner. Outside the door, the class tour continued. Laughter echoed faintly down the hallway. Kalin tried to focus on the sounds, anything to drown out the questions in his head. How old was she? 6. He counted backward. 6 years ago. The gala. That night. That woman. Soraya. She hadn't changed much. Still calm. Still composed. Still carried herself like she owed no one an explanation, and she hadn't given him one. She hadn't flinched. She hadn't even looked away when he asked, "What's her name?" "Liana," she said. No anger, no blame, just truth. He moved to the window. The city below looked smaller than usual. He used to love that view, the height, the silence, the power. Now all he could think about was a little girl in sneakers and braids holding her mother's hand, looking up at the world like she didn't know she came from him. Why didn't Soraya tell him? Why hadn't she called? Why hadn't she made him choose? And then, a worse thought came. What if she had tried? What if he had missed it? He sat down hard in his chair, the leather groaning beneath him. No, he would have known. He would have remembered. She didn't tell him, not out of anger, but out of something colder, something he couldn't control. She didn't expect him to care, and that cut deeper than any accusation. Kalin leaned back and stared at the ceiling. His mind raced with moments from that night. The way she looked at him, not with admiration, not with fear, but curiosity, like she saw through all the noise and found the man underneath. She hadn't asked for anything. Not his name, not his number, not even a promise. And the next morning, he did what he always did, left before the other shoe could drop. The difference this time? He hadn't just left her, he left his daughter, Saria. He whispered her name aloud, just to feel it again. He had looked her up once after that night, just once, found nothing but a first name and a resume that disappeared after 2 years in nursing school. He hadn't tried harder. Why would he? It was one night, a blur. Now, it had a face, a name, a voice that might one day ask, "Where were you?" Kalin's stomach twisted. He'd spent his life building walls. Money, structure, power, all designed to protect him from the chaos of emotion, from mess, from people wanting things. But Soraya never wanted anything, not even now. And somehow, that made him want everything. The intercom buzzed. He ignored it. His assistant knocked lightly. "Mr. Ward, the school group is preparing to leave. Do you want to say goodbye?" He didn't answer. He stood slowly, walked to the glass wall, and looked out again. He saw the group far below, tiny figures moving toward a waiting school bus. He saw her, Saria. Her head was turned, helping a student with their backpack. Liana skipped beside her, clutching a sketchpad tight to her chest. Kalin's breath caught in his throat. She didn't look back once. That night, Kalin didn't go home. He stayed in the office, let the hours pass without interruption. No meetings, no dinner, no distractions, just questions. Who was Liana? What did she like? What made her laugh? What scared her? Did she know who he was? Had Soraya ever said his name? Was she angry? Or had she really built a life where he didn't exist? He searched for Saria online again. This time, he didn't stop. He found an old work listing, then a local school site. Greystone Elementary, student counselor, Ms. Saria Wells. There she was, a simple profile picture, a short description. Believes every child deserves safety, trust, and to be seen. Kalin stared at those words for a long time. His daughter had lived 6 years without him. He wasn't there for the first step, the first laugh, the first nightmare. He had missed it all, and she hadn't stopped him. He closed the laptop and sat in silence. Then he stood, grabbed his coat, and left the building. By morning, he had a plan. He called the school, not as the CEO, just as Kalin. He didn't want press, no cameras, no attention. He asked for a meeting. No agenda, no demands, just coffee. with Saria. 2 days later, they met at a quiet cafe tucked away from downtown noise. She arrived on time, dressed simple but strong. Her presence never wavered. She didn't hug him, didn't shake his hand. She simply sat. "I wasn't sure you'd show," she said. "I wasn't sure you'd agree," he replied. Silence. Then she sipped her tea. "You cancelled a school tour and disappeared. I figured something was coming. I didn't know," he said softly. "I know." He looked at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" Saria's eyes didn't soften. "Because I knew you'd leave again." Kaylin swallowed hard. She wasn't wrong. He had nothing to say. "I wasn't protecting you," she continued. "I was protecting her. Liana doesn't need temporary men in her life. She has stability. She has peace. She doesn't cry wondering why someone's missing." Kaylin looked down. "I didn't think you'd even remember me." "I did." He met her eyes again. "Is she mine?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. Liana. Age 1. Birthday cake on her cheeks. Wearing a little paper crown. Smiling wide with that same frown-shaped mouth when she laughed. Kaylin smiled too, without meaning to. Saria slid another photo forward. Liana sleeping. Her arm curled under her head. Wrist turned just enough to show a small crescent-shaped scar. The same scar Kaylin had from falling off a bicycle when he was 10. "Born with it," she said. "Doctor said it wasn't common, but I recognized it." Kaylin's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd care," she said. "Not out of cruelty, but because I truly believed your world didn't make space for girls like her." He took a breath. Then another. Then he said something he hadn't said in years. "Can I try now?" Saria didn't answer him right away. Not with words. She studied him. Not his clothes, not his watch, not the man who built a billion-dollar empire, but the man who sat quietly across from her, folding his hands like he was afraid she'd say no. He wasn't used to this. She could see it. He was used to closing deals, not opening wounds. She finally spoke. "Trying is easy," she said. "Staying is what matters." Kaylin nodded. "Then let me stay." Saria looked away, her gaze trailing toward the window. Outside, the world moved without waiting. Cars, people, noise. Inside, it was just them, and the shadow of everything left unsaid for 6 years. "I'm not asking you to take over," she said. She's never known a man in her life that didn't walk away. "I won't let her start wondering if love disappears overnight." Kaylin leaned forward. "I don't want to take over. I want to be there." They sat like that for a while, two people reshaping everything they thought they knew. He wasn't there to prove anything. He was there because, for the first time, he wanted something money couldn't demand. His daughter. And maybe the woman who raised her. "Tell me about her," he asked softly. Saria hesitated, but something shifted in her. She pulled her phone from her bag and tapped the screen. Photos. Dozens of them. Liana eating pancakes. Liana with paint on her cheeks. Liana asleep with a book half open on her chest. "She reads a lot," Saria said. "Like me when I was younger." Kaylin smiled faintly. "I used to read under the blankets with a flashlight." "She does that too," Saria said. "She thinks I don't know." He chuckled. She didn't join him. "She's not a show-off. She's quiet. Watches everything. You'll need to earn her trust. She doesn't give it away." Kaylin nodded slowly. "I wouldn't expect her to." Then she paused. Her expression changed. "She asks questions." Kaylin looked up. "Questions I can't answer," she said. He leaned in. "Like what?" "Like why she doesn't look like anyone at school, why her skin is lighter than mine, why her smile is different." Silence hung heavy between them. "I tell her families come in all shapes, that she's special, that she's mine, and that's enough." Kaylin's voice lowered. "She deserves the truth." Saria nodded. "And the truth has to be consistent. If you come into her life, it has to be for good." He didn't blink. "I'm not walking away again," he said. The next afternoon, Kaylin parked his car down the block from Greystone Elementary. He watched from a distance. Not because he was afraid, because he didn't want to get this wrong. The bell rang. Children spilled from the building like a wave of noise and color. Then he saw her, Liana. She held her backpack by the straps, swinging it gently. Her hair was pulled back into 2 buns. Her eyes searched the crowd, then landed on her mother. She ran into Soraya's arms. Kalen smiled, his chest tightening with something unfamiliar. He didn't go over, not yet. This wasn't about him, not today. The next time he called Soraya, his voice was steady. Would it be all right if I started small? Define small, she said. Maybe Fridays? I could pick her up from school, take her somewhere, read with her. He heard her inhale softly. She loves the botanical gardens, she said. They have a reading corner for kids. He smiled. Then I'll be there Friday, 4 o'clock. That Friday, Kalen arrived early. He wore jeans, a soft grey sweater. No driver, no assistant. He waited under the oak tree outside the school gate. Liana came out holding a folded craft paper in her hand. She saw Soraya first. Then she noticed the man beside her. Her steps slowed. Kalen stepped forward, unsure what to say. Soraya knelt beside her daughter. Liana, she said gently, this is Kalen. He's someone I knew a long time ago. Liana stared at him. Quiet, not afraid, just watching. Kalen crouched down. Hi, Liana, he said. I heard you like books. She tilted her head. How did you know that? He smiled. Lucky guess. She blinked. I like dragons. And princesses who rescue themselves. He laughed. Those are my favorites too. That was how it started. Fridays, 1 hour at first. Then 2. Reading, talking, drawing. She was slow to warm. Careful, but she never looked away. She asked questions like her mother. Gently, but directly. Do you have a kid? She asked once. No, he said. Do you have a dog? Not yet. Why are you always early? He smiled. Because I don't want to miss anything. One day, she handed him a drawing. It was of 3 stick figures, her, Soraya, and Kalen. She had drawn a tiny heart between each of them. Kalen stared at it for a long time. Then he looked at her. Can I keep this? She nodded. It's for you. Soraya watched it unfold from a distance. She didn't interfere. She didn't push. But every time Liana came home after those Fridays, she was a little lighter, a little braver. And once, she asked, Mommy, is it okay if I call him something? Soraya paused. Like what? Liana shrugged. Just something that feels right. Soraya smiled. Say what you feel. A week later, Kalen picked her up again. She ran up, holding another drawing. Hi, she said. I saved you a snack. He grinned. Lucky me. She held his hand and tugged gently. As they walked, she said softly, I told my teacher about you. He glanced down. Yeah? I said you're Kalen, but also, maybe kind of my dad. He stopped walking, looked at her. Only if that's what you want me to be. She smiled. I think I do. That night, Kalen sat in his penthouse alone. The view hadn't changed, but everything else had. He pulled out the drawing she gave him, the one with the 3 figures. He framed it, placed it beside the photo of his late mother, and whispered the same promise he made 6 years ago, but this time he meant it. I won't leave. If this part of the story touched something in you, whether you're a single parent, someone who's missed a chance, or someone waiting for a second one, drop A in the comments and share your thoughts below. Sometimes, healing starts with stories we finally tell. The next few weeks moved like new seasons settling in quietly. Kalen's Fridays with Liana became a ritual. It was never flashy. No extravagant trips, no press, no headlines. Just quiet time, books, walks, laughs in between questions. Liana, in her way, tested him, not with attitude, but with silence, with the way she held his gaze too long or asked questions that didn't sound like a child's. Do people always listen to you because you're rich? He blinked. Sometimes, Do you like that? He thought for a second. Not always. She tilted her head. Mom says real respect doesn't come from money. It comes from being kind. Kaylin smiled. Your mom's right. She nodded like it was obvious. She usually is. The public never knew. Kaylin kept their world private, protected. He'd built billion-dollar deals with headlines chasing him. But this was different. This wasn't business. This was his daughter. And somehow, the most important thing he'd ever handled had nothing to do with numbers. It had to do with listening and showing up. Every time he dropped Liana off, he'd wait until she walked into the gate. Soraya never asked to come along, but she always opened the door, always watched quietly. Their exchanges were polite, soft, no pressure. Then, one afternoon, as he handed Liana her backpack, Soraya lingered a little longer. She's doing better in school, she said. He turned. Yeah? She's more focused, less anxious, sleeps better too. He looked down. Good. You're making a difference, she added, almost too quietly. Kaylin glanced at her. So are you. You've done everything alone. She shrugged. You do what you have to do. He wanted to say more, but Liana ran up between them, handing Soraya a flower made of construction paper. So he just smiled. Later that week, Kaylin sat alone in his home office, flipping through an old folder. Inside was a photo. His mother, young, eyes the same color as his daughter's. He hadn't looked at that photo in years. He stared at it now. And something clicked. He wanted Liana to know where she came from, not just biologically, but emotionally. She deserved to know she wasn't the first girl in the world to carry her name with grace. He called Soraya the next morning. Can I take her somewhere this weekend? Soraya hesitated. Where? My childhood town, he said. I want her to see where I grew up. Silence. Then, are you sure you're ready for that? Saturday morning, Kaylin pulled up to the curb in a clean black SUV. Liana wore a pink hoodie, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. Soraya walked her out. You packed snacks? She asked, mother mode fully on. Yes, Kaylin said. And I checked the seatbelt. Twice. Liana climbed in easily. She didn't ask questions, didn't look back. Soraya, on the other hand, stood still at the doorway, arms folded, lips pressed tight. Kaylin rolled down the window. We'll be back before dark. Soraya nodded. Call if she gets tired. I will. He pulled off slowly. Liana waved. Soraya didn't, but her eyes followed them until the car turned the corner. 2 hours later, they pulled into a quiet neighborhood lined with aging oak trees and peeling fences. This is it, Kaylin said, stopping the car in front of a small weathered house. Liana looked around. It's not big. No, he said, but it was home. They walked up the short path. The house was now owned by another family, but he stood in front of it like he still belonged. I used to sit on those steps after school, he told her. My mom worked 2 jobs. I waited here until she came back. Liana looked up at him. Was it lonely? Sometimes. Were you scared? He nodded. A lot. She thought for a moment. Did anyone ever make fun of you? He smiled. Only every day. She grinned. Same. He laughed gently. Then she said, So we're both tough, huh? He looked down at her. The toughest. They walked through the neighborhood. He pointed out the corner store that sold day-old cookies, the park where he broke his arm on the monkey bars, the tiny library where he first read a book about space. I used to think I'd be an astronaut, he said. Liana looked up. Why didn't you? He chuckled. Because I hated flying. She laughed. That's a good reason. They ended the day sitting on the hood of the car, watching the sky turn orange. Kaylin handed her a small box. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a bracelet, nothing fancy, a simple leather strap with her initials engraved on the inside. For me? He nodded. To remember today, and because I'm proud of you. Liana turned it over in her fingers. I never had a bracelet with my initials before. He looked at her carefully. You've always had my name, even if I wasn't there to give it to you. She looked up, eyes shining, and leaned into his side. That night, when he dropped her off, she ran straight to Saraya with stories tumbling from her mouth. We saw his old house. He got in trouble at school for drawing dinosaurs on the desk. Saraya raised an eyebrow at Kalin. He shrugged. She asked. Later, as he turned to leave, Saraya followed him out to the car. You told her the truth, she said. I owed her that. She crossed her arms. What about the rest of it? He met her eyes. I'm working on it. Saraya paused, then softly asked, What's your end goal, Kalin? He didn't hesitate. To make sure she never wonders again, Saraya looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. And for the first time in years, something between them felt still, not healed, not complete. But still, Kalin didn't rush the process. He didn't show up with grand gestures or promises carved in gold. He showed up with consistency. Every Friday, he was there, and on some Sundays, he'd send a message. Can I take her to the park? Would she like to see the aquarium? Is she free this afternoon for the science museum? Saraya didn't always respond right away, but she always said yes when the time felt right. And every time he returned Liana, she was smiling, energized, holding a souvenir, or a new fact she'd learned, or a joke she couldn't wait to share. They never talked about the future, not yet. But the tension that once lived between Saraya and Kalin had softened. One day she invited him in for 10 minutes because it was raining and Liana's shoes were soaked. He sat at their small kitchen table while Saraya handed him a towel and a paper cup of ginger tea. It wasn't awkward. It was quiet, comfortable. Liana came out of her room, holding a paper crown. Look, she said, beaming. I made one for you too. Kalin blinked. Me? Yes, it says, Kalin the Brave. Because you faced your past. He stared at her in awe. Saraya watched them. Her daughter, this man she'd once written off, now gently wearing a paper crown with pride. Thank you, he said, voice cracking just slightly. I don't think anyone's ever made me a crown before. Liana climbed onto his lap and adjusted it on his head. You earned it. Later that evening, after Liana fell asleep, Kalin stood to leave. Saraya walked him to the door. Today was good, he said softly. She nodded. She needed it. He paused. So did I. A week passed. Then, too, the city began to thaw into spring. One afternoon, Kalin picked Liana up, and they wandered into a bookstore cafe. She ordered a hot chocolate. He ordered black coffee. They found a quiet corner with beanbags and cushions. Liana picked a book about stars. He read to her softly. Halfway through, she laid her head against his shoulder. I had a dream last night, she whispered. Oh yeah? You and Mummy were both there. But it wasn't like usual. We were all in one house, like, together. He didn't speak for a moment. She turned her face up. Is that weird? No, he said. That sounds pretty special. She nodded. It felt special. That night, Kalin stood outside Saraya's door, holding Liana's backpack. Saraya opened it like always, but paused when she saw his face. You okay? He handed her the bag. She had a dream. Saraya raised a brow. Nightmare. No, he said. The opposite. He told her about it. She listened, arms folded, expression unreadable. She dreams things that make sense to her, she said after a pause. He nodded. She asked if it was weird. Saraya leaned against the doorframe. What did you say? That it felt special. They stood in silence. Then she said, She's starting to hope. I know. She doesn't say things like that, unless she's building something in her mind. I won't break it. A few days later, Saraya got a call. Liana had fallen on the playground and twisted her ankle. It wasn't serious, but enough to need a quick trip to the clinic. When Saraya arrived, Kalin was already there. She didn't ask how he got the call. He was sitting beside Liana, holding her hand as the nurse wrapped her foot. He was telling her a story about when he once fell off his bike and cried in front of his whole neighborhood. She giggled. It's okay to cry, she said, as if reassuring him. He smiled. It is. Soraya stood quietly in the doorway, watching them. She didn't interrupt. Not right away. That night, Kaylin offered to carry Liana up to her room. Soraya hesitated, then nodded. He carried her gently, careful with every step. She was half asleep, head resting against his shoulder, arms looped loosely around his neck. Once upstairs, he laid her down and adjusted the blanket. Soraya followed and stood beside him as they both watched her breathe. "She's strong," he whispered. Soraya nodded. "She's mine." He turned to her. "She's ours." For the first time, she didn't argue. Downstairs they sat at the table again. The clock ticked softly. "I think about it a lot," he said. Soraya didn't look up. "About what?" "How I missed everything." "You didn't just miss it," she said. "You were absent by choice." He winced. "But you're here now," she added. He looked up. "And that counts." There was a beat of silence. Then she asked, "What do you want from this, Kaylin? For real?" He exhaled. "I want to raise her. I want to be in her life. I want to support her, teach her, protect her." "And me?" she asked carefully. He hesitated. "I want what I lost," he said. "But I know I don't get to just ask for it." Soraya tilted her head. "What do you think you lost?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Peace, warmth, the only person who looked at me and didn't see money." She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She said nothing, and that silence told him everything. That night, Kaylin didn't push further. But as he drove home, he thought about what came next. Not as a CEO, not as a man who usually got his way, but as someone trying to rebuild something he never should have broken. And this time, he'd build it brick by brick, the right way. The first time Kaylin showed up unannounced at the school, it wasn't to impress anyone. He didn't wear a suit. He didn't bring an entourage. He brought two things, an umbrella and a forgotten lunchbox. Liana had left it in his car over the weekend, and when he noticed, he didn't think twice. He parked outside Greystone Elementary and walked through the front office like any other parent. Some staff recognized him. Most didn't, but Soraya did. She stepped into the hallway just as he was handing off the lunch to Liana's teacher. Their eyes met. He nodded once. She blinked, surprised, but didn't speak until they were alone by the front desk. "You didn't have to bring that all the way down," she said. Kaylin shrugged. She said she needed her lucky fork. Soraya almost smiled. "She really believes that fork helps her focus." He nodded. "So do I." That small moment shifted something again. He was no longer the distant man trying to find his place. He was the father who showed up, even when it wasn't scheduled. The more he appeared, the more natural it became. By the second month, the school secretary no longer asked for his ID. By the third, he knew half the teachers by name. And by the fourth, Liana didn't flinch when she introduced him to a classmate as "my dad." She didn't look for Soraya's approval. She didn't hesitate. She said it like it had always been true. Soraya noticed the changes too. Liana laughed more, slept deeper, grew more confident, and yet, Soraya stayed cautious. She knew what it meant to let someone too far in, especially someone who'd once vanished without looking back. But she couldn't deny what she saw. Kaylin wasn't running this time. He was rooted, present, and maybe for the first time in years, so was she. One Friday afternoon, the sky turned grey just as Kaylin and Liana were returning from the zoo. They rushed to the door, laughing as rain soaked their shirts. Soraya opened it before they even knocked. "She's soaked," she said, pulling Liana inside. Kaylin stayed on the porch, dripping. "You're both soaked," she added with a sigh. "Come in before you catch something." He paused, then stepped in slowly, not like a guest, not like an outsider, but like a man who knew the space and wanted to respect it. Soraya handed him a towel. "Bathroom still the second door on the left." He dried off. She made hot cocoa. Liana put on cartoons in the living room. It felt normal, too normal, and that scared her. Later, while Liana napped under a blanket on the couch, Soraya walked into the kitchen to find Kaylin cleaning the mugs. You don't have to do that, she said. He glanced over his shoulder. I know. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You used to hate silence, she said. He turned off the water. I used to hate being alone. Is there a difference? There is now. She studied him. What changed? He dried his hands and looked at her directly. You did. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, but open. Like something between them was finally being acknowledged. Soraya walked to the other side of the counter. You keep showing up, she said. I plan to keep doing that. And if I ask you to stop? I won't fight you, he said softly. But I won't disappear either. She searched his face. No games, no charm, just truth. But not enough to invade, just enough to be felt. She's not the only one I want to make things right with, he said. Soraya's heart pulsed harder than she expected, but her voice stayed level. I'm not asking for that. I know, he said, but I want it anyway. She swallowed. I've built a life without needing anyone, and I've lived a life where I never let anyone in. They stared at each other. Same breath, same distance, same wound. Liana stirred in the next room. Soraya pulled back first. She's waking up, she said, brushing past him. Kaelin didn't follow. He waited, then turned off the kitchen light and stepped outside into the cooling air. His shirt still damp, his hands warm from her touch, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel lost. He felt found. Kaelin didn't say much that week. He let the moment in Soraya's kitchen settle inside him like a stone placed perfectly on still water. No ripples, no rush, just quiet. And maybe that's why he couldn't get her out of his mind. Not just as Liana's mother, not just the woman from a night long gone, but as someone who saw right through him and still stood. That Friday, he picked Liana up with her favorite smoothie already in the cup holder. She climbed into the car with a drawing folded 3 times. What's this? He asked, pulling into traffic. It's for you, she said, but you can't open it yet. Oh, not until Mommy sees it too. He smiled. So, we're in this together now. She nodded, sipping her smoothie. Team, she said. He looked at her through the rearview mirror. Yeah, he whispered. Team. That evening they stopped by Soraya's place as usual, but this time, Liana ran ahead. Mommy, I made something. Soraya appeared at the door, wiping her hands with a dish towel. What did you make now? Liana pulled out the folded paper and handed it over. Soraya opened it slowly. Inside was a simple drawing. 3 stick figures again, 1 tall with a blue tie, 1 medium with curls, 1 small with pigtails, all holding hands, a heart above them. Below the drawing, written in a wobbly hand, our family. Soraya stood still. Kaelin stayed a step behind. Liana bounced. Do you like it? Soraya knelt and pulled her daughter close. I love it. Kaelin watched from the doorway, saying nothing. Until Soraya looked up. She wants this to be real, she said softly. I do too. They sat down at the table a few minutes later. Liana colored in her notebook, humming to herself. Soraya poured 2 glasses of water and set them on the table, keeping her eyes on her daughter. She doesn't understand the weight of things yet, she said. She just sees love, and she names it. Kaelin nodded. That's what makes her better than us. She's not carrying the history, but we are. Soraya finally looked at him. Her voice was soft, but firm. You hurt me, I know. I told myself I was over it. And I'm not sure anymore. Kaelin didn't reach for her hand. He didn't lean closer. He knew better now. I left without a word, he said, because I didn't know how to want someone without controlling everything. Soraya raised an eyebrow. You controlled nothing that night. He smirked. That's why I couldn't stay. You're not the only one who was scared, Kaelin. I know. You just had the luxury to run. Silence. Then she said, I didn't need your help. I still don't. I believe that, but that doesn't mean I didn't want it. He swallowed. I wish I could change that. You can't, but I can stay now. Liana yawned from her spot on the couch. I'm sleepy, she mumbled. Saraya stood. Go get your pajamas, baby. Liana disappeared down the hall. Kaylin stayed seated. Saraya didn't move. I didn't expect this, she admitted. Not the field trip. Not your face. Not any of it. Neither did I. But here we are. He nodded. You could have ignored it all, she added. Pretended she wasn't yours. Slipped back into silence. I thought about it, he said. Her eyes narrowed. Not because I didn't care, he continued. Because I didn't think I was worthy. Saraya's expression softened. Parenting doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks you to show up. And I'm still here, he said. She looked down at the drawing Liana had made. The three of them, holding hands. And for the first time, she didn't feel the need to guard herself. I'm not asking you to make up for the past, she said. Good, he replied. Because the first can't. But if you're serious about this, you need to prove it's not just for her. Kaylin straightened. What does that mean? You're being a father. But are you ready to be present, as a man? Not just because you missed out on her, but because you care about both of us. He didn't flinch. He didn't offer flowery words. He simply said, yes. Later, as he stood by the door about to leave, Saraya followed him out onto the porch. It was cooler now, spring settling into evening. He turned, ready to say goodbye. But she spoke first. Dinner, she said. Sunday. Just the three of us. He blinked. You're sure? She nodded. You've earned it. That Sunday, he brought flowers. Nothing expensive. Just a simple bouquet from the shop near the park. Liana wore a dress with stars on it. Saraya wore jeans and a soft sweater. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't talk about the future. They just ate, laughed, listened. And at the end of the night, Liana curled up on the couch between them and whispered, "This feels like home." Kaylin didn't speak. Neither did Saraya. They didn't have to. Some truths are louder in silence. Kaylin woke up earlier than usual. The city was quiet, the kind of silence only found before sunrise. He stepped into his living room, barefoot, carrying a mug of black coffee, staring out at the skyline. But his mind wasn't on deals or acquisitions. It was on Sunday, on dinner, on Liana curling up beside him, on Saraya brushing a strand of hair behind her ear and smiling like she used to, when she was younger, when there weren't questions, wounds, or half-built trust. He wasn't thinking about being a CEO that morning. He was thinking about how long it had been since something had felt like family, and how much he didn't want to lose it. Later that morning, he sat at his desk and opened a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a photo, old, slightly faded. His mother, holding his hand on his first day of school, her eyes full of worry, his full of determination. He stared at it, then picked up his phone. He tapped a name he hadn't used in ages, his godfather, the only man who ever came close to being a mentor in his life. Kaylin? Yeah. It's been a while. It has. I need to ask you something, Kaylin said. And I need you to be honest. Always. Kaylin exhaled. Did you ever regret staying with someone who hurt you? A pause on the line. Then, regret? No. But I learned that forgiveness without change isn't love. It's surrender. Kaylin let those words hang. His godfather continued. If you're trying to fix something, be sure it's not just guilt that's driving you. Guilt fades. Love doesn't. That night, Kaylin found himself pacing. Not out of nerves, out of urgency. There was still so much he hadn't said to Saraya, so much he hadn't earned the right to say yet. But he didn't want to waste the time he was finally being given. The next Friday, Liana had a school project, create a family tree. Kaylin picked her up from school, and she climbed into the car holding a large blank poster. We have to do it together, she said. He glanced back. All right, what do you need from me? She shrugged. Names, pictures, things I don't know yet. He nodded. Then, we'll fill it in. Back at his apartment, they spread the poster across the dining table. Kaelin pulled out a small box. Photographs, keepsakes, old letters. "This was my mom," he said, pointing to a picture. "She's pretty. She was smart and strong. What happened to her? She got sick. A long time ago." Liana looked down at the photo, then up at him. "Do you miss her?" "Every day." She nodded. "I'd miss Mommy too." He leaned forward. "You're never going to lose her." She smiled, then held up the marker. "Your turn. You go here." She drew a box and wrote Dad in crooked letters, then added herself below, and then... She hesitated. "What about Mummy?" she asked. Kaelin looked at her. "What do you want?" She tilted her head. "I want to put her right next to you." He didn't speak. She added the box. 3 names now. 3 spaces connected by hand-drawn lines. No explanation. Just belonging. When he dropped her off that night, she insisted on carrying the poster inside herself. Soraya opened the door, took one look at it, and smiled. "She's proud of it," Kaelin said. "She should be. She put you and me side by side." Soraya glanced at him. "She's allowed to hope." Kaelin's voice lowered. "So am I." A few days later, they sat on a bench at the park while Liana played on the swings. Kaelin leaned back, hands clasped. "I think about that night a lot," he said. Soraya looked over. "The gala?" He nodded. "You were the first person who didn't ask me about my company or my net worth. I didn't need your numbers. That terrified me. Because you couldn't buy my attention. Because I wanted yours." She studied him. "And then you left." "I did. I woke up alone." He swallowed. "I thought leaving was safer than staying. Safer for you, safer for me. But it was selfish." "Yes." Silence. The sound of children laughing filled the space between them. Then Kaelin said something she didn't expect. "I'm sorry." She turned to him. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the swing set, where his daughter flew back and forth, legs outstretched, laughter peeling through the breeze. "You missed so much," Soraya said quietly. "I know." She walked early. He smiled. "I bet she ran soon after." "She did." He turned to her. "I don't want to miss anything else." They sat in that moment, simple and real, and for the first time she believed him. Not because he said the right words, but because he was still sitting there after all of them were spoken. Kaelin had always known how to take control of rooms, silence conversations, and walk away before things got too real. But not this. Not Soraya. Not Liana. There was no strategy for this kind of closeness. No formula for rebuilding something you once threw away. And yet, this was the first time in his life he didn't feel like running. After the park, Kaelin found himself driving in silence. Not toward his penthouse. Not toward the office. He drove past his old neighborhood, past the house with the cracked steps, past the corner store that still sold burnt coffee and candy from last year's shipment. He pulled over and sat with the engine off. Then he did something he rarely allowed himself to do. He remembered. His mother used to sit with him on the floor in their living room, pulling out old photo albums, laughing at pictures that told stories he couldn't remember. "This was your first smile," she'd whisper. "This was the first time you ran into my arms. This is the boy I prayed for." She never had much, but she had him. And now, he had someone. Liana. And maybe, if he didn't ruin it again, Soraya too. That night, Kaelin sent Soraya a message. "Can I talk to you? Just you." She responded, after 10 minutes, "Tomorrow night, when Liana's asleep." When he arrived, the house was quiet. Soraya opened the door wearing an oversized tee and leggings, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. No makeup, no performance, still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "She's out?" he asked gently. "She knocked out after dinner," she said. "She insisted on wearing her dad bracelet to bed." He smiled. "She's attached." "She is..." Soraya stepped aside. "Come in." He sat at the kitchen table. She poured 2 cups of tea. No sugar, just warmth. They sat across from each other, hands around their mugs. I wanted to say something, Kaylin started, without it being about Liana. Soraya leaned in slightly. Okay, I think about the version of me who left you that night. The one who wrote a note and disappeared. He was scared, he was selfish, and he didn't know how to stay when someone didn't need anything from him. She didn't speak. He continued, you didn't ask for money, or favors, you didn't even ask for a name. She finally said, because I didn't want to owe you. He nodded. And I didn't want to be owed. She folded her arms. We were both protecting ourselves. I protected myself right out of something good, he said. I walked away from the only moment in years where I felt peace. He looked up at her. You were peace. Saria's eyes softened, but she stayed guarded. I don't need an apology, Kaylin. I needed a man who stayed, a father who showed up. I'm trying to be both now. I see that, she said. But that's not what scares me. What does? That you'll do this for a while, then decide it's too much, or not enough. He leaned forward. I've made mistakes in every part of my life, but this, he placed his hand on the table. I won't let this be one of them. She studied him. You're saying all the right things. I'm not trying to say them. I'm trying to live them. She set her mug down. And what if I'm too tired to risk it again? Then I'll wait. For how long? As long as it takes. They sat in silence. The kind of silence where nothing needed fixing. Just space to breathe. Then she said, Liana's noticed. He looked up. She asks questions like, why does Kaylin sit so close to you? Or, why do you smile when he texts? He smiled. She's smart. She is. Soraya looked him straight in the eye. She's watching both of us. She's watching how you treat me. What you say, what you don't say. If you disappear again, she won't forget it. I won't disappear. Words are easy. Kaylin stood, walked to the cabinet, pulled open a drawer, took out a post-it note, and wrote something down. He placed it on the table. She leaned forward and read it. I'm still here. You wrote that night you left, she said softly. Thank you. Don't reach out. I know. This one's better. They didn't kiss. They didn't promise anything more. But for the first time, she didn't feel like a woman raising a child alone. She felt like someone seen, someone remembered, someone cared for. And when Kaylin left that night, he didn't walk out quietly. He told her, sleep well. He told her, I'll see you in the morning. And he did. Liana opened the front door on Saturday morning before Soraya could reach it. She beamed. Hi, Daddy. Kaylin froze. He hadn't expected it. Not yet. He'd heard her call him Kaylin. Mr. Even that guy who brings snacks, but never this. His chest tightened. His throat thickened. She didn't even blink. She just opened her arms like it had always been true. He knelt down, pulled her close, and whispered into her shoulder, Hi, sweetheart. And that was it. He didn't ask for the title. He didn't earn it in one grand moment. She gave it, quietly, freely, and it undid something deep inside him. Saria stood behind her, watching. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. That kind of thing doesn't need commentary. She simply nodded, stepping aside so he could come in. They spent the morning working on Liana's class project, something about community helpers. She had chosen to talk about her mom. Kaylin smiled as she scribbled the word counselor in bright red crayon. She helps sad kids feel safe, Liana explained to him, pointing to her drawing. And sometimes she helps their mommies too. Soraya, standing in the kitchen, turned her head away, pretending to find something in a drawer. Kaylin caught the shift, and respected it. After lunch, they all walked to the park, not as visitors, but together, as something that resembled a family. They shared ice cream. Saria wiped Liana's face, while Kaylin tried to convince her vanilla was better than chocolate. He failed, miserably, and when the wind picked up, Kaylin gave Liana his jacket, wrapping it over her shoulders like a second skin. I'm not cold, she insisted, teeth chattering. Let me pretend I'm useful, he said. She giggled. Soraya caught the look in his eyes then, something soft, protective, permanent. Later, as they walked home, Liana skipped ahead, humming. Soraya and Kailin lagged behind. "She called you Daddy," Soraya said after a moment. Kaylin's hands stayed in his pockets. "I wasn't ready. You didn't have to be. She was—" He looked sideways at her. "Is that okay with you?" "I'm not the one she's testing," she said. "But if she trusts you with that name, it means something." Kailin nodded. "I'll never take it lightly." That night, he didn't want to leave. But he didn't ask to stay either. He helped clean the kitchen, dried the plates, and stood at the door like always. Soraya walked with him. "You good?" he asked. She shrugged. "I'm still watching." He respected that. She wasn't putting him through a test. She was watching how her world responded to his presence. And for now, that was enough. He leaned in slightly, not to kiss her, just to feel the air shift between them. "I'll text you when I get home," he said. Soraya nodded. "Drive safe." He left. 2 hours later, her phone buzzed. "Kailin, got home safe. Also, thank you for letting her call me that." "Soraya, I didn't let her." She decided, "I'm just not fighting what feels real anymore." Sunday morning, the doorbell rang again. Soraya blinked in surprise. Liana was still asleep. She answered the door in slippers and a long hoodie. Kailin stood there with a bag in his hand. "Breakfast," he said. "Just bagels, and the good kind of cream cheese." She stared at him. He lifted the bag. "I can leave it here if you'd rather." "No," she said. "Come in." They sat in the kitchen quietly. The only sound was the toaster popping and Liana's soft snore from the living room. Soraya took a bite and hummed. "Okay. This cream cheese really is good. Told you." She glanced at him. "You know this is starting to feel like something." He didn't flinch. "It is something. You're coming over uninvited now. You didn't throw me out." She smirked. "Yet." He leaned back, watching her. "I've never had this before," he said. "Not like this. No pressure. No performing." Soraya looked up. "Are you performing now?" "No. That's why it scares me." She nodded slowly. "That's how you know it's real." Just then, Liana wandered in, blanket dragging, hair a wild halo. She climbed onto Kaylin's lap like it was second nature. Soraya raised an eyebrow. "Don't say it," Kailin whispered. Soraya smirked. "She's already got you wrapped." She had me the second she called me Dad. They stayed like that for a while, drinking coffee, trading quiet smiles. Liana asleep again in Kaylin's arms. And for once, no one was rushing to leave. No one was bracing for goodbye. The next few weeks passed in calm waves. No drama. No big announcements. Just small moments strung together by quiet routines. Drop-offs, pick-ups, text messages about forgotten. Lunches, quick dinners, and bedtime stories Kailin stayed to finish when Soraya worked late. Their rhythm had changed. There were no labels, no declarations, but Kaylin's toothbrush sat in the bathroom cabinet beside Liana's bubblegum toothpaste. He'd started carrying snacks in his car. Liana called him Dad more confidently. And Soraya, she smiled more. Not constantly, but more than she had in years. Still, she kept a boundary, not out of fear, but wisdom. She let him in, little by little. He never pressed. He didn't ask for keys or answers she wasn't ready to give. He was steady, and maybe that steadiness was starting to feel like love. One Friday afternoon, while waiting in the school pickup line, Kaylin's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost declined it, but something told him to answer. "Hello? Mr. Ward?" "Yes. This is Principal Morgan from Greystone. I'm calling about Liana." Kaylin's chest tightened. "What happened?" "She's fine. Not hurt. But there was an incident with another student." Kailin closed his eyes. "I'm on my way." He arrived at the school faster than usual. Soraya was already there, standing outside the office with her arms crossed. When she saw him, her expression softened, but only slightly. "They said she hit a kid," Soraya said. Kailin blinked. Liana. She pushed someone. Hard. The principal stepped out and ushered them inside. Liana sat in a chair, arms folded, lips pressed into a pout. Liana, Saria said gently. What happened? The little girl glanced at the ground. Kaylin knelt beside her. It's okay, he said. Tell us. She took a deep breath. He said, I didn't have a dad. Kaylin's heart dropped. He said kids like me don't have real dads. Just moms who lie. Saria's jaw tightened. Kaylin reached for her hand instinctively, but stopped halfway. Instead, he turned to Liana. And what did you do? I told him I do have a dad, she said, and that he brings me books and hugs me and makes pancakes. Kaylin smiled. And then, he said I was lying. So I pushed him. The principal cleared her throat. I understand it was emotional, but we can't encourage physical retaliation. Saria nodded. Of course. Kaylin looked at his daughter. I'm proud of you for speaking up, he said. But next time you talk to a teacher. Okay. She nodded slowly. Okay. Then she looked up at him, eyes wide. Am the first in trouble? Kaylin shook his head. Only if you don't finish your reading tonight. She grinned. Saria exhaled beside him. After they left the school, Kaylin insisted on driving them both home. Saria didn't argue. She sat in the front seat while Liana hummed in the back, swinging her legs. She's protective, Kaylin said, eyes on the road. She's observant, Saria replied, and she knows who shows up for her. Kaylin glanced at her. I want her to always know that she does. Saria paused. Even when I doubted you, she didn't. Kaylin didn't respond. He didn't need to. Her words said more than approval. They showed trust. And trust was more valuable than forgiveness. That night, Kaylin stayed for dinner. Liana set the table. 3 plates, 3 forks, 3 napkins. After dinner, she disappeared into her room with crayons and a flashlight. Kaylin and Saria sat on the couch, soft jazz humming in the background. I used to imagine what you'd say if you ever found out about her, Saria said. He turned to her. And I thought you'd be cold, maybe curious, but not this. I didn't know I was capable of this, he said. She tilted her head. You are. I think I've always been. I just never had anyone worth giving it to. Saria met his eyes. You still think this is temporary? No, he said firmly. Not anymore. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, she asked me yesterday if you were going to marry someone. Kaylin sat up straighter. She did? I asked why. She said she doesn't want a new mom. She wants the one she already has. He swallowed. And what did you say? I told her we don't control other people's hearts. But we do get to protect our own. He leaned in. What does your heart want, Saria? She stared at him, took a breath, and whispered, time. He reached for her hand. This time, without hesitation. He didn't squeeze it, just held it. No rush, he said. And for the first time since they met, the silence between them felt like the beginning of something honest. That night, he kissed her hand before leaving. Nothing more, nothing less. But it stayed with her long after he was gone. If you believe love is more than words, and that showing up matters more than saying I'll try, leave A in the comments. And if this part of the story reminded you of someone worth holding on to, share it. Real families aren't perfect. They're present. Kaylin was already waiting at the school gate when the final bell rang. He didn't check his phone. He didn't pace. He just stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes trained on the entrance. When the doors opened, Liana burst out with her usual skip-step rhythm, a neon green folder clutched in her hand. She spotted him instantly. Daddy. He crouched down to catch her mid-jump, lifting her with ease as she giggled against his shoulder. I missed you too, he said into her curls. She pulled back. We got our report cards. Kaylin raised an eyebrow. And? She handed him the folder proudly. He flipped it open, scanning through the list. Math, reading, science, behavior. All top marks. She's not just smart, said a voice behind him. Saria, she's kind. Her teacher said she comforted a new student who was crying this week. Kaylin stood, folder still in hand, and looked at Saraya. "She's more than I deserve," he said. "No," Saraya replied. "She's the best parts of both of us." They walked together toward the car. Saraya had a late shift, so Kaylin would be watching Liana until bedtime. Liana held both their hands, swinging hers between them. And for a moment, it felt so natural, like it had always been this way, like none of the broken pieces had ever been scattered. At Kaylin's place, Liana settled into the couch with popcorn and a documentary. About dolphins, she insisted on watching 3 times in a row. Kaylin watched her more than the screen. The way she reacted. The way she whispered facts under her breath before the narrator could say them. The way her eyes lit up every time the dolphins leapt out of the water. "I want to swim with dolphins someday," she said, turning to him. He grinned. "We'll make it happen." She tilted her head. "You promise?" He didn't flinch. "I do." After her bath, Kaylin read her favorite book aloud. Halfway through, she interrupted. "Daddy?" "Yeah? Do you think Mommy likes you?" He blinked. "She always liked you when I was a baby." "I think, because she always smiled at your name." Kaylin paused. "I think she's starting to," he said. Liana nodded like that answer made sense. "Do you like her?" He smiled. "Very much." She yawned. "Then you should buy her flowers." Kaylin laughed. "Think she'd like that?" "Not roses," she whispered, as her eyes began to close. "She likes yellow things." When Saraya arrived later that night, Kaylin opened the door before she could knock. She was still in her navy scrubs, hair tied back, lips a little dry from a long day. He smiled. "You look tired." She sighed. "Kids were wild today." He motioned her inside. "She's asleep." Saraya walked quietly to Liana's room, peeked in, then returned. She mentioned dolphins at school. "That was you?" "She wants to swim with them someday." "She wants a lot of things," Saraya said, grabbing her bag. "I just want her to be okay." "She is," he said. "Because of you." Saraya stopped in the hallway. Kaylin stepped closer, not pushing, just present. "I know I missed a lot," he said. "But every moment I get now, I take seriously." She looked up. "I know." And she didn't stop him when he reached for her hand again. Saraya's weekend passed in a soft haze of quiet dinners, overdue laundry, and subtle glances across the room when Kaylin came by to drop off a book for Liana. He didn't stay that evening, didn't linger. He placed the book in Liana's hands, gave her a warm hug, and told Saraya, "I'll give you 2 the weekend." That small gesture said more than anything else. He respected the space they had. But he also left behind a note tucked into the inside cover of the book. Not for Liana, for her. "Thanks for letting me stay close, even when I didn't deserve it. I won't make you regret it." She didn't reply, but she read it twice before putting the book on the shelf. Monday morning came with a quiet rhythm. Saraya dropped Liana off and headed to the school counselor's office, where a stack of paperwork and 2 back-to-back sessions waited. She was mid-session with a 5th grader when her office phone buzzed. She didn't recognize the number, but something in her gut twisted. Later, when she called back during her lunch break, the receptionist answered. "Miss Wells, someone came in asking for you." Saraya frowned. "Who?" He didn't give a name, just said it was a family thing. Tall, dark suit, dark hair. She picked it up after school, an envelope, sealed. Inside was a folded note. "Meet me at the rooftop of 87 West, 6 p.m. No name, no explanation, but she knew. Kaylin. That evening, she wore a simple white blouse and jeans. Nothing intentional, just what she had on. Liana was with a neighbor, and Saraya stood at the edge of the rooftop with the sun at her back, watching Kaylin lean on the railing, staring out at the city skyline. He didn't turn when she walked up. "I thought you hated surprises," she said. "I don't anymore." She stepped closer. "What's this?" He finally turned. "I wanted you to see something," he said, motioning toward the table nearby. 2 chairs, a folder, a cup of tea, hers. black coffee, his. She sat cautiously, unfolding the file. Inside were papers, official documents, a custody form, voluntary declaration of paternity, a savings account summary under Liana's name, a medical authorization form giving Soraya complete control but adding him as emergency backup. "I'm not here to take anything," Kaylin said before she could speak. "I just want to be the kind of father she doesn't have to question." Soraya didn't speak. "Not yet. I don't need rights," he continued. "I need responsibility, and I want her to have everything she might ever need, without it being attached to conditions." Soraya turned the pages slowly. Everything was clear, transparent, fair. He wasn't trying to buy her favor. He was showing up on paper, in action, and not asking for anything in return. "I had these drawn up last week," he said. "I didn't want to tell you until I was sure I was staying. And now you're sure." "I've never been more sure of anything." She set the papers down and folded her hands. "What happens if she asks for more?" Kaylin raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Like waking up to the same breakfast every morning, like someone to help with homework, like family dinners, birthdays, a father who doesn't disappear when life gets inconvenient." He didn't blink. Soraya didn't say yes. She didn't need to. She leaned back in the chair and looked at the sun setting over the skyline. "I almost forgot what this city looked like from up here," she said. "You said you loved heights." "I do. But not when I feel like I'm the only one afraid to fall." Kaylin stepped closer. "I'll fall with you," he said. "And I'll be the one catching you too." He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't move to kiss her. He let the wind do the talking. And when she looked up at him, her eyes softer than they'd been in years, she said 3 words. "Let's try slowly." They stood there until the stars peeked out between skyscrapers. Not because they needed more time, but because this time, no one was leaving first. 3 months passed, and with them came change, not loud or dramatic, but deep and constant. Kaylin didn't just show up anymore. He stayed. He helped with school pickup when Soraya worked overtime. He filled out field trip forms. He attended parent-teacher nights. He brought extra cupcakes on bake sale days, even though he couldn't bake to save his life. Soraya teased him about that often. "You bought these?" She smirked, eyeing the perfect swirl of icing. "I supported a small business," he countered. "That's practically heroic." They laughed, not like strangers, not like cautious co-parents, like people slowly finding their rhythm again. Liana thrived. Her teachers noticed it. Her classmates gravitated to her. She smiled more. She wrote stories during recess. She raised her hand with more confidence. She even won an award for kindness at school, one she insisted Kaylin come accept with her. "You helped me feel brave," she told him that day. He held the little certificate like it was made of gold. One afternoon, Soraya came home to find her daughter and Kaylin in the kitchen. He wore an apron that said Liana's sous chef. She was stirring a bowl like a pro. "Guess what we made?" Liana asked, eyes sparkling. Soraya sniffed the air. "Brownies." "Surprise brownies," Liana corrected. Kaylin held up a lopsided tray. "I think we added too much love and not enough structure." Soraya raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like how this all started." Kaylin chuckled, but his eyes didn't leave hers. After dinner, Kaylin helped with the dishes, then lingered while Liana curled up with her tablet. Soraya wiped the counter while he dried the last plate. "I got offered a contract in London," he said quietly. She froze. "Oh, it's temporary. 3 months. A tech investment summit. They want me to help with a rollout and expansion." She set the cloth down. "When would you leave?" "Next week." She didn't respond right away. Then, "Are you going?" He looked at her. "I haven't decided." Later that night, she stood at the edge of the doorway, arms folded. "You've been consistent," she said. "You've shown up, and she believes in you now." He nodded. "So, if you leave," she continued, "even for something valid, it won't feel small to her." "I know. I'm not saying you can't go. I'm saying you can't go without understanding the cost." He stepped forward. That's why I'm talking to you first." She searched his face. "What would this trip mean for your company?" "It would help. And for your ego." He smiled faintly. "That's not what it's about anymore." "Good," she said, "because I think you've finally started being proud of something real." Kaylin stayed outside a little longer that night, sat on the porch, watched the sky shift. He wasn't scared of losing his company. He was scared of losing his place in their world. And for the first time, he understood something. Success meant nothing if no one was there to celebrate it with you. The next morning, he walked Liana to school. They kicked leaves along the sidewalk. She hummed. At the gate, she paused. "Mom said you might go to London." He knelt beside her. "Yeah, someone invited me for work." "Are you going?" "I don't know yet." She looked down. "If you go, will you come back?" He touched her cheek. "I will always come back." She stared into his eyes. "Promise?" "I swear." Then she smiled and hugged him tight around the neck. That afternoon, Kaylin sat in his office. His assistant came in with a stack of folders. "Are we confirming the London trip?" she asked. Kaylin looked at the itinerary, then at the picture of Liana taped to the corner of his monitor. "No," he said simply. His assistant blinked. "Sir, push it back," he said, "or find someone else." She hesitated. "But they need you there." He smiled. "No, they want me there. But I need to be here." That evening, he stopped by Soraya's house with a small box in his hand. She opened the door, surprised. "I thought you'd be in meetings till late. I cancelled." He handed her the box. Inside was a simple charm bracelet, a tiny dolphin, a book, a heart, and one small engraved plate. "You, me, her, always." She stared at it for a long time. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I wanted to, and London." "I'm not going." She blinked. "You're sure?" "I've chased a lot of things in my life," he said. "But this is the first time something real chased me back." They stood in the doorway again, same place as months before. But this time, he didn't look like a man unsure of his place. He looked like someone who knew exactly where he wanted to be, with her, with their daughter. Home. Soraya didn't wear the bracelet right away. She kept it in the top drawer of her nightstand, beside the extra batteries and forgotten coupons, a soft reminder that trust didn't have to be rushed, it just had to be real. But she looked at it every night, and every morning before work, she opened that drawer, touched it gently, and closed it again. Kaylin never asked about it. He didn't need to. He knew what it meant to earn something slowly. The following week, the three of them went grocery shopping. It was a mundane thing, apples, bread, paper towels, but it meant everything. Liana tossed cereal boxes into the cart like it was a game. Kaylin pushed the cart and made ridiculous jingles about frozen peas. Soraya laughed for the first time in public with him, not because of a joke, but because he bumped into an aisle display and blamed it on bad wheels. They looked like any other family. No cameras, no boardrooms, just a cart with a squeaky wheel and a little girl who kept asking if they could get marshmallows. That weekend, Kaylin brought flowers, not roses, yellow tulips. He didn't say anything about them. He just placed them in a vase while Soraya made pancakes and Liana danced barefoot across the kitchen floor. And when Soraya noticed, she smiled. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. That Sunday night, after Liana was in bed, Kaylin and Soraya sat on the back porch wrapped in a single throw blanket, sharing the last of a hot chocolate that had gone lukewarm. The air was cooler now. Fall was creeping in. She leaned against him, not completely, just enough to rest. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder, slow and sure. "You know," she said softly, "you still haven't asked to come back." Kaylin didn't look away from the stars. "Because I won't ask," he replied. She turned slightly. "No, I'm not asking for a space. I'm building one with you, every day. I'll never ask to be let back in like a visitor." She was quiet for a beat. "And what if I open the door?" He looked down at her. Then I'm not leaving again. That night, she finally wore the bracelet. Kaylin noticed when she reached across the table to hand him a mug. She saw his eyes land on it, just for a second. She didn't say anything, neither did he, but both of them smiled, and the silence between them wasn't empty. It was understood. The next day, Liana came home from school with glitter on her cheeks and a permission slip in her backpack. "There's a father-daughter breakfast at school," she said, bouncing on her heels. "You have to come." Kaylin looked at Saria. She nodded. "It's up to you." He looked at Liana. "What time?" 7:30. He grinned. "I'll be there at 7. The morning of the breakfast, Kaylin wore a soft grey sweater and brought her favorite strawberry muffins from the bakery down the street. Liana wore a yellow dress with polka dots. They sat at a small table, surrounded by dads in suits and sleepy-eyed kids eating chocolate chip waffles. Liana kept beaming. "My dad builds big things," she told her friend proudly. "But this is more important." Kaylin froze for a second, then smiled. She had no idea what those words meant to him, but they meant everything. After the event, they walked to the car hand in hand. She climbed into the back seat and buckled herself in. Kaylin lingered by the door before closing it. "Thanks for letting me come," he said. Liana tilted her head. "You didn't need to be invited." He smiled. That was all the permission he'd ever need. That evening, Soraya found a note in her coat pocket. Kaylin's handwriting. Simple, steady. "You and her. You're the only legacy I want." It was a Saturday night. Soraya didn't plan anything fancy. She just made dinner like usual. Spaghetti, salad, and garlic bread that was a little too crisp. Liana was in the living room, sprawled on the rug, building towers with colored blocks and narrating a world of her own. Kaylin leaned against the kitchen doorway. "You made enough to feed the entire building," he said, smiling. "She eats like a small army," Saria replied, plating the pasta. "And you don't stop at one serving." He grinned. "Fair." She handed him 2 plates. "Take those to the table." They moved like a team. No bumps, no questions, just smooth rhythm, like people who knew each other's movements better than words. Dinner passed in laughter. Liana told a wild story about a student who put ketchup in his milk. Kaylin gagged on purpose. Soraya rolled her eyes and refilled the water glasses. It wasn't a milestone. It was just nice. That kind of evening where nothing spectacular happens, but you don't want it to end. After dinner, Liana yawned and asked Kaylin to read her a bedtime story. He followed her down the hall while Soraya cleaned the dishes. She could hear his voice as he read, deep and warm, full of dramatic pauses and silly sound effects. When he came back to the kitchen, the lights were low and the dishwasher was humming. Soraya poured them each a cup of tea. "I forget how quiet the house can be when she's asleep," she said. Kaylin sat across from her. "You ever miss the chaos?" She thought for a second. "Sometimes. But peace is nice too." They sipped in silence for a while. Then he spoke. "Do you remember what you said to me after Liana was born?" She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say anything." "You weren't there." He nodded. "Right. But I read something." Her face shifted. "That letter," she said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded, worn envelope. "You kept it?" she asked, her voice a little unsteady. "I read it every week after I found it." She stared at him. He placed it on the table. "I didn't deserve it. Not then. Maybe not now." Soraya reached out slowly, fingers brushing the edge of the paper. "I wrote it when I was exhausted, angry, but not broken." He nodded. "You told me you were raising a child who would never need to beg for love." She met his eyes. "And I did." He exhaled. "You raised her right. Without me, you're here now," she said. "She sees that." He looked down. "What about you?" "I'm still watching," she whispered. "But I'm also feeling again." Kaylin stood, walked around the table, held out his hand. She looked up at him. "Dance with me?" he asked. She laughed once. "There's no music." She stood slowly and let him take her hand. They swayed in the quiet kitchen. No beat, no rhythm, just closeness. He pulled her just a little nearer. "Tell me to stop," he said. She didn't. So he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Years of distance melted between them, and when they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his chest and whispered, "You scare me. Because you don't trust me?" Because the first want to. They didn't go any further. He didn't ask. He just held her, and for the first time, she didn't push him away. She closed her eyes and let him stay. That night, he didn't go home. He slept on the couch, fully dressed, one arm tucked behind his head. Soraya peeked in just before sunrise. He was snoring softly. The living room still smelled faintly of garlic bread and tea, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like her home wasn't carrying the weight alone. It was shared, balanced, alive. The sun slipped past the curtains slowly, casting a warm glow across the living room floor. Kaylin stirred as the morning sounds crept in. Birds outside, the faint rattle of a cereal box, a kettle starting to hiss in the kitchen. He sat up, blinking at the ceiling fan above him, blanket still draped across his legs. Liana's voice came first. "You snore." He looked over. She stood by the couch with her little arms folded, wearing her unicorn pajamas and the world's most serious expression. He rubbed his eyes. "So I've been told." She didn't smile, at least not yet. Instead, she said, "Mom doesn't let people sleep here." Kaylin sat straighter. "Did I break a rule?" Liana thought about it. She didn't seem mad. "Then maybe I got lucky." She finally smiled. "You want pancakes?" she asked. He grinned. "Absolutely." Soraya was already at the stove, hair tied back, wearing an oversized t-shirt and socks. "Good morning," she said without turning. He paused. "You okay?" She flipped a pancake. "I let you stay." "You didn't push." "That's okay." He stepped closer. "You sure?" She finally turned to face him. "You made her laugh before 9 a.m. I'm sure." Over breakfast, Liana told him about her science project, something with baking soda and food coloring. "Can I bring it to your office when it's done?" she asked, mouth half full of pancake. Kaylin nodded. "Only if you promise not to blow anything up." Saria laughed softly. It was a beautiful sound. Later that afternoon, while Liana napped, Kaylin sat outside with Saria on the porch steps. She held a mug of tea. He had nothing in his hands. "I didn't know I could want this," he said. She looked at him. "This?" He nodded. "Not just the life, the quiet, the responsibility. Her, you." Soraya was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Why didn't you stay that night?" He exhaled. "Because you saw me. And I didn't know what to do with that." She studied him. "And now? I want to be seen. By both of you." They didn't talk much after that. But when Liana woke up, she ran straight into his arms. And he caught her with ease, like he'd always been meant to. A week later, Kaylin brought his mother to meet them. She was small, graceful, with the same steel-grey eyes as Liana. At first, Soraya was nervous. She remembered the stories, how Kaylin's mother had once been cold, distant, protective of her son's wealth and image. But when she met Liana, everything softened. She knelt, hands trembling, and said, "You have my eyes." Liana looked up and said, "But I have Mom's hugs." And the woman laughed, a sound Kaylin hadn't heard in years. Later that evening, Kaylin's mother pulled Soraya aside in the hallway. "He's quieter around you," she said, "but lighter." Soraya didn't respond at first. Then, "I'm not trying to change him. You already have." That night, after they said goodbye, Kaylin stood with Soraya in the kitchen again. "You never asked me to meet your family," she said. "I didn't need to," he answered. "You already are." She looked down, shy but smiling. He stepped closer. "I know we started wrong." "We didn't start at all," she corrected gently. We paused. He brushed a hand against her cheek. "Then let's keep pressing play." Spring came quietly. No big declarations, just softer mornings, warmer air, and flowers blooming outside Soraya's apartment window. Kaylin started showing up more often, not with noise or grand gestures, but with presence. He showed up with breakfast bags on Wednesdays. He showed up at pickup lines, waiting for Liana even before the bell rang. He showed up in quiet ways. And Saria noticed. One evening, Kaylin knocked on the door holding a small cardboard box. No logos, no name. Inside was a child's backpack, purple, glittery, with Liana's name stitched on it. Saria looked confused. She mentioned hers was tearing, Kaylin said. I didn't want to make it a big thing. Saria touched the name thread. You listened. Always. They sat together afterward, watching Liana color at the table. Crayons everywhere, hair in her eyes. She's the best thing I never planned for, Saria whispered. Kaylin nodded. She's the best thing I've ever had anything to do with. Then he added, next to you. That night, after Liana was asleep, Kaylin didn't rush to leave. They lingered on the couch, talking about childhoods, about fear, about how success can sometimes feel like armor. I built a wall so high no one could touch me, Kaylin said. And I built one so no one could see me cry, Saria replied. He looked at her gently. Maybe it's time to tear them down. She didn't answer. She leaned her head on his shoulder. That was answer enough. Days passed. Then weeks. Kaylin's presence became a rhythm. Liana called him Dad in passing, without being asked to, and he never corrected her, only smiled and pulled her close. He wasn't perfect. Sometimes he showed up late. Sometimes he got flustered helping with school forms. Once he burned dinner trying to impress Saria with a recipe from YouTube. But he stayed. He kept coming back. Then came the night that changed everything again. It was quiet. Rain against the windows. Sarah had just folded laundry. Liana was in bed, humming in her sleep. Kaylin looked nervous, more than usual. I need to ask you something, he said, standing near the doorway. Saria sat up straighter. Okay. He walked over. No suit, no fancy jacket, just jeans and a dark shirt, and a small velvet box in his hand. Her breath caught. You don't have to say yes, he said quickly. But I've spent months learning you, watching you raise our daughter, watching you give without asking, loving without demanding. And I want to do this right. He knelt, not fully, just enough to make her heart race. I want to be in your mornings, in your hard days, in your quiet ones, not as a visitor, as yours. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, no big diamond, just a gold band with her initials engraved next to Liana's. Tears welled up before she could stop them. I never needed a fairy tale, she whispered. I never knew love could be this real, he replied. She reached out, touched the ring, then touched his face. Yes, she said. Are you sure? I've never been more. In the hallway, Liana had peeked around the corner. She clapped once, quietly, then ran back to bed and pretended to be asleep. But her smile gave her away. The wedding wasn't grand. It didn't happen in a castle or on a yacht. It happened in the backyard of the school where Saria had worked since Liana was born, under an arch made of white linen and simple flowers. Just 20 people stood in a loose circle. No spotlight, no press, no designer dress. Saria wore a soft cream gown, barefoot in the grass. Kaylin wore a navy suit with no tie. Liana stood between them, holding both their hands. In a dress she chose herself. I like the pink one, she had said. It looks like smiles. She was right. When the officiant asked for vows, Kaylin looked nervous. He pulled a folded note from his pocket, but then he paused and spoke without reading. Saria, the first time I saw you, you didn't look at me like I mattered, and that was the first time I realized I wanted to. He looked at Liana, and the first time she called me Dad, I realized I never wanted to be anything else. Saria smiled through quiet tears. You didn't need me, and somehow you made room for me anyway. I'm not promising perfection. I'm promising presence. He held her hand tighter. No more goodbye notes, just coffee in the morning, stories at night, and holding your hand until we're grey. Saria's turn came. She didn't have anything written, just a long breath and full eyes. "I never wanted a man to save me," she began. "But I did want someone who saw me." She looked at Liana, then back at Kaylin. "You left once, and I learned to stand. But you came back, and I learned what it meant to be held." She took a step closer. "We didn't plan for love. We built it. One pickup line, one dance recital, one messy dinner at a time. Then softly, 'And I'm not letting go.'" They kissed to applause. Liana jumped into their arms after, and someone from the school played an old jazz song on a borrowed speaker. The three of them danced under fading sunlight, with laughter, clumsy steps, and cake on their fingers. That night, the house was quiet again. Kaylin carried Liana upstairs as she sleepily mumbled a song from the wedding. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I love you, little light." Then he came downstairs, where Soraya stood in the living room, barefoot again, watching the photos they'd taken on her phone. "You ready?" she asked. He walked over, pulled her close, and said, "I've been ready since the night I walked away." She tilted her head. "You sure?" He kissed her gently and whispered, "I'm sure. This time I'm home." If you believe real love isn't about perfection, but presence, patience, and showing up when it matters most, drop A or in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that second chances can be soft, quiet, and life-changing. And if you felt something while watching, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because here at Mr. Charles Stories, we believe the best love stories are the ones that grow after the heartbreak.